and good morning everyone, and welcome to the Male CEO Forum. This year we're looking at how companies are helping their people work through the significant challenges that have been left behind by COVID, and also how they're adapting a lot of the measures they brought in during COVID for the workforce now, and particularly how they're dealing with their corporate culture, maintaining the health of that, and also how they are looking at providing a 360 wellness, safety, and just, I think, making people feel that it's fun as well as important and purposeful to go to their work. So I'm very, very, very happy to be joined here by Salman Amin, who is the global CEO of Pladis, the food group. Open your cupboard and you will find his products. We also are very happy to be joined by, they've just managed to line themselves up in the right order, Enrique Polo de Palara, who's the head of Salesforce in Spain. I've got, down the other end, Silvio Popovici, who's the CEO of PepsiCo Europe. I've got Albert Triola, who's the head of Oracle here in Spain, and it's lovely to see him again. And David Martinez, who's the CEO of Iberdrola Energy here in Spain. He runs all their retail networks, so if you've got any problems with your supply, he's the guy. So you know who he looks, what he looks like now. So I think it's pretty fair to say that never before in the history of corporate life have companies been this involved with the health, well-being, and lives generally of their staff. And we've certainly come a long way in the last decade or couple of decades. I just wanted to draw on Silvio to start off with, just to characterise a bit of the change that they've seen in PepsiCo, because I think on the panel you've probably got the biggest number of staff globally, about 300,000 people. So how can you characterise a little bit this whole journey that the corporate world has been on between health and safety and what we've got now?
Right, so I hope it's working. So just thank you very much for being here. I'm a little bit intimidating being in minority. Usually it's the opposite. And I have to say I had a great dinner last night with a great conversation and paella and red wine. So thank you very much for this opportunity for me to connect. If I look back 20, 30 years ago, and we're talking about employees and well-being, it was more about health and safety. Make sure the air is clean in the factory, that people don't sleep and eventually break their hands. And this was very important, but it was very narrow. And you go now 30 years later, and we are talking about well-being of our employees. We are talking about physical health, mental health, emotional health. So it's a tremendous transformation that the companies are going through. And I have to say also society is going through, and we are going through, and it's the same for me as an individual. 20, 30 years ago, it was all around work hard, play hard. I didn't know the burnout word, or I didn't know about mental illnesses or stress at work. Today, it's very common to discuss in the companies about a much better definition of wellness. So within this, all the efforts, and interesting today when we discuss, we're all doing a lot of great things, create a work environment that is looking much more holistically at the well-being of our colleagues.
Thank you. I come over to you there, Salman, now, because I think we were talking about you've got a two-stage thing. You have some people who work downstream, some people who work upstream, some people that work the whole way through COVID and obviously needed different kinds of support than people who work in offices. I mean, how has that played out post-COVID? And can you touch a little bit on corporate culture for me?
Can you hear me? Yeah, this is good. So first and foremost, I'll echo Silvio in saying thank you, Irene, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be with all of you. Look, in our company, about 85% of our colleagues are on the front lines. They're not in an office. They're usually in a manufacturing environment because we have bakeries all over the world. So when you think about that, the challenge for us going into COVID, through COVID, was not just how we set days in the office or days out of the office. It was the reality that we had to keep running our bakeries to provide the food that the population needed. So there was no question of shutting down the bakeries, and we were still running 24/7. So then what are those equitable solutions that allow people to prosper and still deal with the stress that everyone was inevitably feeling? So we had to design different solutions for different contexts and what folks were coming out, because even for our workers in our bakeries around the world, you can imagine the pressure they were feeling from their families not to leave home. They were being told not to go anywhere else. So how do you then build that? And for us, it was a multifaceted solution, a set of solutions, because it's based on the culture, the countries in which they're working. It's based on first finding the triggers of their stress. So we, for example, created a fund that was available to any colleague anywhere in the world, no questions asked, and it was several million pounds. And we said, if you need money for anything, bills, a spouse or a loved one has lost a job because of COVID, just write to us. We will ask you no questions, and you can take money. You'll never have to repay it. Right? So that had a huge impact on folk. So we had about a third of the population, approximately a third, that took us up on it. And we kept coming back every year and saying, it's there, we've enhanced it, who else wants to take it? The second thing we did was we didn't take any money from the government. We wanted our colleagues to say that the company did it for them. It's not that the government did it for them. Right? So these things helped us create the right solutions, especially for those who were hourly paid workers. And separately, for the office workers, of course, it was about going fully remote for a period of time, and then slowly people have been migrating back. And then we created more bespoke solutions for the folks working in the office, because the needs are different.
Taking this one. Thank you. Sorry about this, technical issues. Actually, Albert, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, the whole coming back into the office and how trying to change or trying to meet the changed needs of your staff. I mean, you were saying how you had a lot of decentralized offices, but now you're centralizing them. So there's more community feeling, there's more fun, although it sounds to me like most people in Madrid have a lot of fun all of the time. But can you tell us a little bit about your coffee mornings? I mean, just the stuff that you've been doing at Oracle to increase people's confidence and pleasure at work.
Yes, thank you. First of all, thanks for having me here. I think it's a real pleasure and honor to be in this audience. I think that first of all, we need to have in mind that employees that thrive in their day-to-day job, the company will success, and without any doubt. The only thing we need to have in mind is that, as you described, COVID changed a little bit our way of working. And for me now, the office is just another tool. And going to the office need to be a purpose for that. And going to the office is not because we mandate, it's because there are something happens in the office that makes sense. For us, the first thing that we pay attention is we want to listen what's going on in a diverse organization like us. We have 2,000 employees in Spain, 42 nationalities, 4 generations working in the same company. So you need to be very close to them and listen. So that's why we create this a coffee with Albert thing, where I spend time with employees, 12, 15 people, listening what's going on. And then you discover the diversity and you discover what makes sense for each of them. And I think this our job is to put in place activities that make sense for them. For example, we bring CEOs of companies. Some of them are here sitting in this room because employees could listen and learn from others, but afterwards they can ask questions, they can learn more from the conversations that they usually don't have that access, or bring in sport leaders, or bring in any other people that they can be more closer to the employees first. The other thing is that by listening to employees, there is a lot of attention on any kind of, and we're discussing with Enrique as well, on the philanthropic or social activities. And by listening, they come with ideas. We have projects, I don't want to go into details, but we have projects like Oracle for Girls, where we try to help girls from 4 to 16 years old, explain them that technology is as well for girls. We help women that lost the job with no IT background to reinvent themselves, a project called Reinventatech. So there is a lot of initiatives that the beauty is that when you listen, employees comes to you. So for me, going to the office again is listening, open the door, to work in a very open environment where they can table any ideas to make the whole company more successful and attractive for employees, right?
Right. Thank you. And Enrique, do you want to tell us a little bit about what's happening at Salesforce?
Sorry? No, okay. So first of all, thank you, Irene, for having me here. It's a pleasure. Getting to the first question, I think it's important. I joined Salesforce 10 years ago, and I was positively surprised to see that well-being was part of our, let's say, culture.
Where were you before?
I worked with Albert.
Oh, so Albert's learned from you, or you've learned from Albert?
Yes, yes. No, but the point is that, I mean, I think that today is a no-brainer. Okay, but 10 years ago, it was about well-being, okay? It was about equality, purpose. We have a strong philanthropic model, but also high-performance culture, okay? And the beauty is how you combine them, okay? We take care of people, but we are a demanding culture, but we take care of people. And what we basically saw in COVID was that we proved the model to be right, okay? In fact, our employee engagement index increased during COVID because people saw that we cared about people. Okay, so this is very important. And there is a strong business case.
And it's been maintained post-COVID?
Yes, I
that
mean,
measurement?
Of course. We added a mental health channel that we didn't have previously and that we have kept, okay, because we found in COVID, you know, isolation, frustration, anxiety, okay, that, and again, in a different way depending on the age and also in the culture, okay, some cultures are more social than others. I mean, social distancing in some countries, let's say, is de facto, and in others is a big exception. So regardless of this, what we saw is that there is a strong business case. You know, in the case of Salesforce, okay, we are in the software business. We tend to attract top talent, okay? By that time, it was a differentiator, and I think that today is a must. Okay, this is what has changed. But from our standpoint, this is what we did. Getting to the office point that I fully agree with Albert, I mean, it's very diverse depending on the geography, okay? In Europe, people have got back to office. We include in the governance model some meetings or team meetings that make people, they have a purpose to go to the office, but it's not mandatory, okay? And what we see is that social cultures, they go more often. Young people, they love to be in the office and socialize, okay? Women prefer work-life balance, so what you need to give them is flexibility, okay? And they value a lot this flexibility. So you see, you need to personalize. What you find is that there is not a standard. We have, of course, a baseline for everybody in terms of well-being, but I think that flexibility and letting people be themselves, okay, including the equality piece and also the purpose, makes a strong engagement. In fact, just to give an example, we run twice a year employee surveys, okay, and one of the questions is 80% of our employees believe that their work gives them, okay, a sense of purpose. 80%, okay, 4 out of 5. And that's strong. And I think it's a combination, and that's why well-being is so key to us.
Thank you. And tell me, David, Iberdrola, of course, has had to keep going the whole way through COVID, and like Silvio and Salman, you have staff that have to work 24/7 and others who are working more in an office environment. I mean, how have you adapted your corporate policies to cover everybody?
Well, as my colleague has said, I mean, if you want to keep employees' well-being, it's not only about health and safety, it's about emotional being, personal satisfaction. So you have to have tailored measures for every individual or for the situation of every team. So of course we pre-COVID had our flexibility measures, our conciliation measures, but I think that during COVID what we took conscience was that we were able to maintain a very critical public service in a very difficult situation where, of course, people were going to the installations, but people were not at the office, they were at their home. So what we took conscience is that we could go much further in those flexibility measures than we were going before. And I mean, it's what I said in the beginning. What you have to do is have a set of policies, but a set of policies that are adapted to the reality of each team. And for sure, it's not the same, the reality in all terms. I mean, because the reality, the kind of people, the abilities, the personal needs of, for example, people of 10 young digital developers, which are in a very different viral moment of their lives, or a people or somebody working in a distribution station close to his retirement. So what you have to be is, I mean, you have to take conscience of having wellness all around your organization, but being enough tailored to have different measures or measures adapted to the real situation of each team, each individual. And there, I have said we have teams with 3 days of remote work. We have the option that worker that want to go to the office 5 days per week, he can. I mean, you have to have that flexibility. That's the way of retaining and engaging people and having talent in your organization.
Right. Do you want to say something other?
Yes, I think that listening my colleagues as well, every company should start having in mind the diversity of the groups we have in the company and give them the platforms to make their voice heard and to sometimes even over-communicate. I mean, for instance, we have Oracle Women's Leadership Group that is extremely active. The more active they are, the more they communicate the progress, the more volunteers they have working in that group. Or you have another one for LGBTI, or you have another for young people that they just coming out from the universities, they know much better than anyone else what is needed in the universities. They are very proactive, proposing ideas to make their contribution to the company to be more successful. So I think that the diversity of the companies, it's even more interesting to be considered to make the company the great place to work for.
Yeah, I agree with that, and we'll come back to that actually. But one thing that we were talking about in our pre-discussions was the fact that COVID gave a lot of women the opportunity to spend more time with their kids as well as work full time. But funnily enough, they ended up becoming school teachers because their children were working from home. So they were suddenly 3 jobs, 1 salary. So at the end of COVID and people with the opportunity have the opportunity to go back to work, I still feel that a lot of women have taken advantage, especially ones with younger children, are working more from home, probably to the detriment of their careers, because I think we all know, it doesn't matter what you read on company policy, it's a good idea to be in the office if you want to be known, if you want people to understand who you are, and then you're more likely to get a promotion if you're there and they see you. It's just the way of the world. So I want to know how you're dealing with this. I mean, drawing women back into the office, because frankly, you've probably spent a lot of money training these women. You don't want them to be part of the leaky tap. You want them to be in the office or actively involved in the company, bringing their best every day. I mean, we had a little chat about that.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I think this is This is a critical challenge, and I don't know if any one of us has found the perfect playbook for this. The way I think of this is the bigger question is one of flexibility. It's not about how many hours in the office or out of the office. And that challenge was there before COVID. We have to create an environment where companies like myself and people like myself and my colleagues allow and enable and empower women to do what they need to do to lead a life, whether it's commitments or elsewhere. So coming and going as they please. So for example, if a given company has Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in the office, but someone has a school issue or to take their child to the doctor on a Wednesday afternoon, please do, right? These things should not interfere with someone leading the kind of life that creates balance for them. And I can't sit there and say, there's a perfect balance that I can somehow legislate that works for every individual. Everyone has to decide what's best for them. And how do we then create the flexibility around it that allows them to choose how they want to exercise that? Because I don't want folks to think that if they participate in this way, it comes at the expense of their careers. They should not have to make those kind of trade-offs. So allowing folks to decide that and still be able to find fulfillment in their careers and what they do is the great challenge of our times. And I can sit here and share with you what we've done, but I can almost guarantee you a year from now, 18 months from now, we will have learned more. And so it speaks to us to be super adaptable, not be afraid to change. And one of the things I'm talking a lot about at Plattis is, for my own self, and I'm hoping others will adopt it, this concept of learning to learn. What gives me purpose is I'm learning something new every day, every month, certainly every year. And this concept of learning to learn says I have to be humble enough, and I have to learn to listen differently to the evolving needs of my colleagues. And that's a skill set I think we're building. And honestly, I'm super humble about it because I think I have a reasonable idea of how to go forward, how we implement it, such that it's customized for every individual, which is really the goal, is the journey we're on. And it gives me a ton of energy on a personal level to be able to think this through and say, so what should change in 24 versus what we did, say, 2 years ago? And thinking about, but not pretending to know what comes in 25 or 26. So that's, I think, this idea of learning to learn is a big part of how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, I think I think expecting the unexpected is now part of all of our playbooks. I mean, we were talking about inclusion. Obviously, diversity and inclusion is something that we've been talking about for many years. But I think Silvio gave us a fun example of how he has changed his own inclusion practices at PepsiCo and how he's relating to a much broader bunch of people in his company. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? That was super fun earlier.
Right. I guess it's the first is an exercise of maturity, where we start to see and to understand and to listen more to the previous points. And my personal experience is that I have my own blind spots when it comes to inclusion, and I didn't realize until recently, and the example is very simple. I believe in socializing at work, and I'm an athlete, and I bike. So every time we had big conferences with a lot of people, I was organizing a bike ride. And people that are strong enough to bike with me, they were showing up. But then I got feedback in a form that in PepsiCo, it's a bike boys club. And the women feel excluded and said, if I'm not a strong biker, I cannot go to these morning meetings to chat with the CEO. And I didn't realize this, but it was a lot of powerful saying in that saying at what environment and what example I was setting for the organization. So now I don't do any more bike rides and so on. So last time I did with the group, it was a Zumba class, which is much more inclusive and so on. But while it's a simple example, it's also a powerful example how organizations are not inclusive enough, and how organization actually we hire and we look for mini-me's, right? We look at people just like us, and we don't consider that they might be also different needs, right? So the more I'm aware of my blind spots, the more I'm trying now to compensate for it and to do not just in my group, but also in the whole organization. And I have to say that another point is that we should hire for cultural add and not for cultural fit. Because then you create more diversity when you are open enough to accept that people can be successful having a much working from home and looking after kids, and they can have a great career. You should not be just 5 days in the office working 12 hours a day. So being much more accepted of different leadership style and different working condition, different work-life balance, it will just improve not just the work environment, but also the company results.
Thank you. Thank you. Actually, I'd just like to take a little straw poll of my panel. Do you, Salman, obviously on the shop floor people are working full time, but in your office, in your other cohort, I mean, how many days a week are they expected to be in?
So we've seen a migration. Officially, it's Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays in the office, but we're now beginning to see in the Western countries, and I have to sort of differentiate, people are migrating in more and more starting in 2024 on Mondays as well. And east of the Middle East into Asia, it's virtually 5 days a week without mandating it. People have largely come back to the office.
Okay. And Enrique?
Yes, in our case, it's 3 days a week. It's a guidance, okay? And this doesn't mean a full day,
Right.
okay? We are flexible also on that part.
Great. And Albert?
So in our case, it's, well, 3 days a week, but we see more and more employees coming to the office one more time if there is a purpose, if there is activities where they can fast learning, or they can connect with others. So we were discussing earlier about networking, diverse networking.
Diverse networking. You mean partying. Thank you. David?
Well, here in Spain, for the very digital profiles, the minimum is 2 days a week, but with the consideration that one of those 2 days, all the team has to be in the office, so all of them, all of them are together. They are not Teams is prohibited that day. I mean, they have to meet face to face. So that's the kind of a special thing of. I mean, if you go to the office, is to get in touch and to have things with your colleagues, to chat, and not to speak by phone or by Teams. So it's just 2 days, but very presential.
Okay. And Silvio?
In our case, the policy is 2 to 3 days a week. We are not forcing people, we are nudging people. We create, make fun to be at work. So you want to come, rather they are forced to come.
In my case, in the FT's case, it was just 2 days a week mandatory. And to your point, in Asia, people tend to be there much more, I think partly because we have a younger workforce in Asia, and they save money on heating and air conditioning bills by coming into the office. They don't have to pay those power bills. And also, they're usually living in tiny little apartments, and it's much nicer to be working in a bigger area environment than being stuck at home. Yep.
But I think, I used to say that our employees, when they join the company, they receive 3 tools: mobile phone, laptop, and an office. And they need to use them as much as they need, right? I think it's like saying you can only use your mobile phone 3 hours per day. That doesn't make any sense. So for me, how many days in the office is not relevant. Is what is the purpose, what do we found in the office. They can accelerate their learning, they can better connect with others, because I'm sure that everyone here, just sitting here, they will learn many more things that if all these people were at home on a Zoom call. So the value is the connecting, the value is learning from others, chatting, the coffee breaks. So like in your laptop, I'm not saying that you are only allowed to use your laptop 1 hour per day, right? It's like...
It's getting in there, yeah. Of course, in our case, we also did free food. So for the first 3 months, all the food in the canteen was free. We were inundated. And now we're just down to free breakfast, and so we've got fewer people coming in. But it worked really well to start off with. So there's a little bit of corporate advice for all of you. Just in the audience, how many of you classify yourselves as Gen Z or Gen Z? Yeah, or very young, very young. Okay, very young. I think that's probably only about 2 or 3 of you. So I think it's fine to talk about you behind your back, because I think we do need to talk about Gen Z, because they are different. They are different from older people in the way they work and in their expectations for work. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Just throw your hand up. And of course, many of us in this room have got Gen Z children, right? So we're living at home with these very special people, and they're just as difficult at home as they are in the office. So how have you adapted, or have you adapted at all, to this the youngest cohort of workers? And, you know, they've never known a world without a smartphone. They don't know anything about what a letter, you know, oh, you used to send things with stamps on them. I mean, they're very, very different people, and they're almost well, they're just like a science experiment in some ways, but lovely science experiments you all are. So how have you adapted your offices for these people who are coming back, not only coming back to the workforce after COVID, but entering the workforce for the first time? And we need them, but how do we keep them and keep them happy?
I have the micro. So first thing is that they are very demanding on the flexible model, but they see the value of being in the office. As I said earlier, we have 4 generations in the company, and the Gen Z, they know that going to the office, they can fast learning because they have a high degree of curiosity, learn from the people in the office, chatting with others in person, so they see the value of this accelerating learning. The next thing is that the way we see in Oracle is that we see a lot of activity they propose to be more visible in social activities, universities, how to help women that have no job. So they are very demanding for ideas. In my Coffee with Albert, they came always with great things, and our job is to provide them the platform to launch those things. And I think that they're very successful, and I make the comment early that we have in the office what we call a family day in Christmas, where employees can with their partners and the little kids to give the Santa Claus whenever. This time, first time ever, employees came with their parents. And they show the company, they show the office, because they are very proud to work for a company that allow them to grow, develop, and they say, oh, Albert, can you introduce my parents, right? So it's quite nice to see that. And we never thought about that before, right? It's just, it means that we are giving them the platform that working for the company makes a difference. Like Oracle.
It's interesting because they're also, more than any other generation, used to giving you information. They're also telling you more about themselves. And of course, introducing their parents to you is really quite an intimate thing to do and not something you normally do.
But if you are proud to work for the company, for them it was like a privilege, right?
Yeah, that's great. You were going to say something, Dave.
Well, I would like to add that it's not only their experience when they are in the company, but also you have to make a whole change of mind during the recruitment process. I mean, it doesn't have anything, it's totally different, the recruitment process before
tell us about
Generation
that.
Z to what we have now. I mean, the interviews, everything is different. Their values, their needs, the questions they ask you when you are trying to engage that talent or recruit that talent to the company, it doesn't have anything to see with what we had before. So you have to adapt totally your recruitment process to the needs, to the values of this new generation. That's what I would like to.
It's different. Enrique.
Yes, I mean, completely in agreement with Albert and David. I would add, as a funny point, that they value a lot fancy offices. Okay, when we have some offices that are not as fancy as others, and when you see the statistics, okay, they don't go to the office as much. They also value a lot volunteering activities. Okay, this purpose dimension that we mentioned before. So, at least in our case, it has been easy. It's been the segment that came before and more frequently to the office because of those two things.
Okay. Did you want to add something, Silvio?
No, I guess in our case, we have 10% of our company, they are just the young generation and Gen Z. And of course, they have different tasks from the company, completely different. And sometimes I look and say, oh, they're crazy. How can they ask this, right? But now I learned to bite my tongue, no? And then it said, this is
You're
the
on
new
a constant learning
expectation.
journey. That's
Right.
what you're on.
So if you think about, and you make, and now they are 10%, in 10 years they'll be 30% and so on. So understanding the new need and the new expectation from a company is absolutely critical. And before, even the name of the function was human resources, and we're looking at people as resources for the company. In the future will be the opposite. The company, and even now, the company should be a resource for people to be their best. As the Gen Z have very high expectation from the companies will have to deliver on it. Otherwise, you'll have a challenge attracting the talent in your company. So while some of the asks sounds too much, this will be the new reality. And you have to create an environment where Gen Zs feel that they are at their best in the company.
Okay. Did you want to add something, Simon? Or?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting exercise listening to my colleagues here. What we see with the younger folks joining us is they're joining us first and foremost because they're buying into the purpose and the vision. Because if they're not, there's no reason they should be coming here. So it starts with that. And the second thing they like is that we offer flexibility. So it allows them to do it. But most importantly, they're super, super focused on their careers. They bring their energy because they want to succeed. And that's ultimately really important. Where I find the greatest challenge, which is helping Pladis as an enterprise to think differently, what the young people are challenging us and really making us think are in areas of equity, areas of sustainability, right? Areas of diversity, and challenging us to why we're not going faster. Why aren't we breaking the norms quicker? Why do we have these restrictions that they see being placed on them? And that's what makes me and many of my colleagues think, because we say to them, and this is part of our proposition, is we think of ourselves as a 185-year-old startup. Because some of our oldest brands, most revered brands, are 185 years old. But we want to behave like a startup, which gives them the energy. But in turn, the bargain we've struck is challenge us to think of the questions we may not even have asked us for or taken as a given.
Yeah, exactly. And of course now there are many more pathways for young. When I started work, and maybe you, there weren't pathways to ask questions of senior management. And now you've got these superhighways that people can travel to ask questions of management. Now, we weren't going to have Q&A, but Queen Irene has just said, look, she'd love to have 10 or 15 minutes because this has been such an interesting panel, and it's not often we get so many brain cells on a stage at once. But so if you'd like to ask a question of one of our panelists, please line up at one of the and I don't want any revenge from any Gen Zs in the audience. Please line up and do that. And please don't make this a party political broadcast. I'd like a short, punchy question for one of our panelists. And here we go. Could you identify yourself, please?
Thanks. So I'm Nimi Almeida. I come from Mexico, and I'm Brazilian. So, and I have a consulting firm, and I'm an independent board member. My question to you, we just heard about robotics in the last panel. And now we are talking about humans working for you, and different kind of humans, different diversity and everything. How do you reconcile the need to have humans and the need to be more efficient and more productive with robots?
I think we might go to our big production CEOs on that. So Silvio and Salman. Silvio, do you want?
Just, I think the company of the future should be powered by artificial intelligence and by emotional intelligence. And the fact is that while robotization and technology helps us to transform the working place and eliminate, for example, hard physical labor, the need for emotional intelligence and the connection will be even greater. So I think for companies, they have to dial up the way they connect with the colleagues and the way they feel and listen to the colleagues, even in the age of AI, or maybe even more in the age of artificial intelligence than today.
Someone?
Yeah, very, very similarly. Look at, I don't see a discrepancy between the two. For me, it's about harnessing the technology, whether it's AI, I heard about ChatGPT and so on, in a way to drive productivity and greater satisfaction. So if you look at us across our plants, we will have a first fully AI-enabled facility by early next year. The question is, which parts of that do we want to use and at what cost? What are the trade-offs with that? So that's a big question. Getting the technology installed is not the biggest challenge, actually. That's not easy, but fairly straightforward. And then it's a question of which are the use cases that we need to harness this technology for. Because there's spaces where, exactly to Silvio's point, I don't see anytime soon technology substituting for human judgment, because that AI is only as good as what are the use cases that have already been fed into it. So this is a great learning. I heard folks talk about how quickly it's being enabled, and a number of folks have spoken to it. The question, though, still is to what end, and what's the broader impact on an enterprise which is made up of people, and how does that impact purpose and the humanity of an enterprise?
Yeah. I'm going to take a question from over on that mic. Hello.
Hello, my name is Andrea Martinez. I'm from Chile, well, half Chilean, half from Spain. I'm a little bit nervous, but I try to use my English as the better as I can. I'm represent here the working moms, right? All of the women that works out of the house and inside the house as well. I mean, take care of the children. I'm a coach, and I work with them in order to help them or support them to deal with this, be a mom, be present, but as be a good employee as well. I mean, give the better results. So
and
my
what's your
question is,
Yeah.
so I'm coming with my question. My question is, what do you think about terms like corporate family responsibility? In order to, as you have a corporate social responsibility, what do you think new policies, or probably you already have, I don't know, that take care of the responsibility regarding the family that the employees that have in your company?
You're nodding your head, Enrique. Why don't you say something? Nodding. And Albert, maybe you've got something.
Yes, I mean, what I would say, I fully agree. I think that we should have a new social contract, okay? The citizen with the government or the state. And I think that taking care of the family should be one strong piece of the contract. I mean, getting to your point, we don't have an explicit corporate in that. But again, if you take care of, I mean, equality, inclusion, and well-being, and I mean, the leadership team walks the talk, because this is very important. In the end, it's not just the CEO, it's all the middle management, okay? You can make it. Because again, it's about flexibility. What I see is that what most women demand is flexibility, okay? I mean, you need to empower them, for sure, but they need to have the option to make decisions, okay, and speak up. And I can tell you, I mean, my first experience was 20 years ago. I was a brand new manager, okay, and again, a direct report told me, Enrique, I cannot hold any meeting after 5 p.m. Believe me, in Spain, after 5 p.m. is normal to have meetings, okay? I know in other countries, this should be a no-brainer. I mean, this lady, I mean, we adapted again, and she kept in the company for 10 years. She was super engaged because she saw that, I mean, it was, in this specific situation, it was me making this decision. But I think that this is what everybody needs to do, okay? Women need to go to the office because their managers need to tell them, okay, let's see how are you able to make it, because you need to socialize, you need to have visibility if you want to get promoted. But let's talk about that. I think, again, to your point, for me, this is top of mind. And governments should have this in the agenda, okay? We need to go to a social contract because otherwise families will not be one of the building blocks of society.
Thank you. Albert, did you want to add something to that? Or? Okay, all right, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And this side,
Hello.
you're on.
Yeah, okay. My name is Annick Daams. I'm located in Belgium. I work for PowerXL. We're a company conducting clinical trials to get access to innovative treatments. So what you mentioned here, I think our company does a lot related to flexibility. People have a big choice coming to the office, changing their work schedules and so on. I think that's very important. But what I notice, and that's not just with the younger people, but also with the older people, is these flexibilities, offering flexibilities, that implies that people know what they want. And that's not always the case. So I'm very curious to understand, how do you coach, guide your employees to really better understand, in an evolving environment, evolving situation, throughout their entire career, how they know what they need to take in that flexibility to be on top of their game and to feel good in what they do?
I can take that.
Thank you.
So you touch a very important thing. I have been educated in two different kind of skills, hard skills and soft skills. I like to change the wording, and I think that nowadays we need to think about switchable hard skills, because whenever you learn today is switching very often. And in order to be good on that, there are other elements that is what I call the solid power skills, where we need to pay attention on how to provide different platforms to employees to learn about curiosity, empathy, learn how to learn, as we heard earlier, learn how to unlearn, how to storytell, how to listen in a very diverse environment where for sure you will sit in a desk with somebody in front of you who will completely think different to you. You don't need to be in a hurry on that situation. So I think that for those things, we have platforms like a mentoring platform all over the world. So I have mentees from China, I have mentees from Latin America, Gen Z, because they are very demanding. So we offer them the platform where they can select whoever they exec in the company to run that. We have platforms for whoever wants, they could become a coach. How to use fast mentoring. So there is a lot of tools, because we are very mindful about how relevant is these solid power skills, and to help, especially Gen Z, but not only them, on how to grow in a company that things are changing very fast. You're welcome.
Did you want to say a quick word?
Yeah, just wanted to say, I trained as an engineer. My first job was digging tunnels under the city of Chicago. Went into marketing and then evolved from there. It's about as diverse, sort of different business, different careers one can have. And my advice to young people to this day is, A, be curious. You don't hit your potential forever. You can keep changing as long as you're curious. And your curiosity is best served when you build networks, diverse networks of people who can guide you, who can give you opinions. You don't have to adopt everything they say, but take it as input, as fertilizer, if you will, for you to develop your own thinking, and you'll continue to evolve, and that'll make your career so rewarding, so rewarding.
Thank you. Silvio, did you want to say something? Or?
Yeah, we believe in PepsiCo, we believe in feedback, and that every employee should receive a feedback from his boss. And we're measuring this. Part of the organization health survey that we're doing every year, we are measuring exactly, did you receive feedback about your work? And through this feedback, you can find ways to improve and so on. And I have to say that is one of that we are scoring the lowest, right? So we are just around 60% so it's something that we work, which means that this conversation, that sometimes are even difficult conversation, don't happen continuously because we don't like to give negative feedback to someone. No? So, but this is that we are working, and we took feedback as an important part of the whole development of our colleagues.
Yeah, good advice. Thank you. This lady over here.
Thank you very much. My name is Salam Atwi. I come from Dubai. I was born in Africa. I was raised in Lebanon, and I lived in the States and now based in Dubai. In terms of well-being, I've went from a culture of civil war to a culture of complete openness to somewhere in between. I believe that always it starts at the leader level, you modeling what you do for your well-being, that the followers or whoever is in your team can actually get inspired. So my question is twofold. One, what do you do besides playing golf to remain well?
Cycle.
And number two, how common is it what you think of well-being, personal well-being, to what you see in the companies, and what do they want? And do you see that there needs to be a chief well-being officer? Is there a need for that, for somebody to strategically look at all the tools and changes that are happening to promote well-being in the workplace? Thank you.
Okay, I think I'd just like to have one word from each of you about what you do, the main thing you do to relax and what makes you feel good. I'm sorry to say I know what yours is.
So 20 years ago, I was 100 kilos. I was heavy smoker, and I was partying a lot, okay? And this was work hard,
I wish
part
I'd known
hard.
you then.
Right, working hard, partying hard was my motto. We didn't have kids and so on, and I thought it's great. My definition of well-being, it was just, can I party hard? Today, I lost 20 kilos, so 20 years later, 20 kilos less. I exercise regularly. I visit a therapist every 6 months. I take care about my diet, and I start to go back to church. So what I'm saying is the definition of well-being has evolved completely, and my understanding, because I'm getting older and maybe a little bit wiser, right? It's completely different, and I want to also to preach the same for people in my company. Just they can take a much balanced view of what is important in life.
Please,
So,
Albert.
I don't want to say how many kilos I lost as well, but 26. But gym is important. I think is keeping our hobbies. I'm painting frames for my friends, for my colleagues, or myself. I believe this is a good way to disconnect or to run a kind of mindfulness activities. I love the networking, the diverse networking. I like to talk with people that outside of my business. It doesn't matter whenever the culture or the job they have. I think it's very refreshing, and it helps me as well to think out of the box. And I try to make reasonably visible all these things, because I believe, as you described, it's important to show that it's not all us telling, but walking the talk.
Any other comments, David?
Well, I think that the last question was regarding that, the question if we consider that if we have to have a wellness or employee wellness officer in the company, and I think yes, I think that actually in Iberdrola we have it. And I think
you have one.
We have a department for employee wellness in the person and people organization, and I think that you need that because you have to have a team thinking, because all this whole set of policies, you have to be sure that they are implemented, you have to be sure that they get to the managers, that they know how to implement it, you have to measure, you have to follow, and you have to evolve. Because as we have said during the whole conversation, needs change, and situation change, and even people that you are enrolling in the company are different one year to another year. So if you don't have somebody that is all the time thinking about that, you're not going to have a wellness policy that managers can take profit of that to have people committed.
Okay. Enrique?
Yes, I mean, getting to your point, I think you need to lead by example. In my case, I'm married, 3 kids. I'm lucky enough to live 15-minute walk from the office, my wife too. So when I'm in Madrid, I always either have lunch or dinner with my family. And my team knows. Okay, and I mean, Albert knows that you can, I mean, full up your agenda of a lot of institutional events, but for me, this is a priority, and my team knows, and I ask them to do the same. Okay, I think that for me, work-life balance is key, and you need to do it.
I think in the interest of time, we'll just take 2 more questions because Irene's nodding at me. So one more question from here and one more question there. I'm sorry, ladies.
Yes.
Please,
My
go on.
name is Ngọc. I'm from Vietnam, and I'm an importer and exporter of products from Vietnam. So my question is, how to make the needs of the company, the good policies of the companies can satisfy the needs of the workers, but how to balance the benefits and the needs of the benefits of the company and the needs of the workers. So that's the very first question. And the second question is, and how to make the people feel safe at AI times now.
Thank you. I think the first question we might have dealt with in our discussion, but if you've got something to add to that, please do. Otherwise, maybe that's a good question. I mean, how you're talking about AI and large language models to your staff, that it's going to be, used properly. It's a tool that frees you up to do higher processing, higher process tasks, but, people are still nervous. So maybe a couple of comments about AI and making people feel comfortable with that. Go on. Yeah.
In our case, what we see is that this is about innovation. I mean, if we believe that in 10 years' time we will be doing the same things that we are doing now, this is going to be a disaster. What you need to think is on the new things that we cannot do today, okay, that humans and software don't do today, but combined, okay, we can do miracles in 10, 20 years' time. So at least in our company, we are empowering the users, okay? There is always a human in the loop model, okay? We want to empower the call center agents or the sales representatives. This is the way, and again, it's important that the culture of the company, communicates properly this. This is about, the AI will not take your job, okay? An individual knowing and managing AI may take your job, okay? And again, when I was with Albert, there was a very innovation, the engineer systems, okay, 15 years ago. And people were concerned, this means that now we will have very little databases. No. Now we can do with databases things that were impossible 5 years ago. So I think this is the mentality that everybody, individual contributors, managers, CEOs need to have, okay? What we can do in the future that we cannot do now.
In the interest of time, this is our last question, and then we need to give somebody else the stage.
I'm Adriana from Mexico, and I think everybody here, we make a big effort to make a reality our projects, but in this moment I'm only the person with a disability. I'm a writer and a speaker, but in this moment I think what going to do in this moment with the artificial intelligence and the robotic, we're going to do to find a good reason for to make opportunities for a person with disabilities.
Well, I hope that, good question, and I hope that a lot of our big companies here have got inclusive policies for people with disabilities. Is there a couple of examples that you can provide? Comrades?
Well, yes. I mean, I think there is no difference. We need to pay attention to provide more proactively opportunities for people with disabilities. But when they are in the job, they can add a lot of value in any position. I think that the technology will help, no doubt, because the jobs are evolving, but the level of curiosity, the level of this, for me, the key thing is, one more time, is these solid power skills. People that have solid power skills, it doesn't matter the rest. And I think we need to encourage the people to develop and to grow and to find a job in the company, assuming that because of all the innovation, we were talking about AI earlier, it will make the jobs changing every 4 or 5 years. But I think that, we have programs, obviously, give more opportunities to the people with disabilities. But I think what's there in the job is just another employee, as obviously as anyone else. And I encourage everyone to put focus on this power skills thing.
Thank you, Albert. And I think that brings us to the end of our session. And I'd like to thank very much Silvio, David, Albert, Enrique, and Salman for their time and generous comments. Thank you.